Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to do my second consecutive George Harrison related video because the other day I just suddenly had an urge to listen to George Harrison live in Japan, this album, which I've been kind of neglecting for years and thinking not very much of it. And I don't know what it was that prompted me to listen to it again, but I did, and I quite enjoyed it on the whole. And George's live work after the Beatles is a little bit sort of checkered because we don't have much of it. It's a bit like Lennon, but at least in Lennon's case we're going to get the one-to-one concert in full coming up in October, I think, and also on video a bit later. In George's case, we've got Concert for Bangladesh, which is wonderful, of course. We've got nothing of the 1974 US tour other than a short clip in the film Living in the Material World of him performing, I think it's What Is Life. But I think that whole tour was filmed, so that's another opportunity for the Harrison estate at some stage. That would be very interesting. And then after that, no touring at all until '91 Japan, when he did a handful of gigs with Eric Clapton in his band. And then after that, just one more gig in London at the Albert Hall, which I'll talk about on April the 6th, 1992. And then in October of that year, he appeared at Dylan's 30th anniversary concert in New York. But few and far between his live performances. And as I say, this album, I've got it on CD, and I played it on CD the other day, and I quite enjoyed it. So let's just go through. I also picked up a bootleg, I seem to remember, before this album came out, or around about the same time. It was a double CD. I couldn't manage to find it. It's in my collection somewhere. It wasn't very good quality, and also I've got a double CD bootleg of the April '92 Albert Hall gig, but again, that's not great quality. So this is a double album on vinyl. And the first thing to say about it is the cover is terrible, in my opinion. It's just a black cover with a silhouette of George, and I don't know if you can pick up that silhouette on the camera, but it's the same picture as this on the inner sleeve. I guess it looks like George, but I don't really think it's representative of how he looked in Japan, because he was clean shaven. But this is very unimaginative packaging, and it's the same inner sleeve for the second disc, no variation at all other than the track listing on the back. And disappointingly, it's not even on the Dark Horse label. They put it on this red label, George Live in Japan label, which I don't like. Nothing compared, not a patch on the Dark Horse label, in my opinion. I suppose it does give you information on who plays, and it's basically Eric Clapton's band, and Eric Clapton did a little set between George's two sets where he performed, I think, Wonderful Tonight and a couple of others. So we've got Steve Ferrone on drums, Ray Cooper on percussion, Greg Philanganes or Philanganes on keyboards, not sure how to pronounce that, sorry, keyboards, backup vocals, Chuck Leavell on keyboards, backup vocals, Nathan East on bass, backup vocals, Andy Fairweather Lowe, guitar, backup vocals, everyone's on backup vocals, guitar, Eric Clapton guitar, backup vocals, Tessa Niles and Katie Kassoon, they credit as vocals, although they're basically backing vocals. But anyway, it's all recorded in 1991, and apparently George's heart wasn't particularly in it, according to Eric. I mean, one thing I'll say about the performances is it's very professionally played by Eric's band, and I really enjoyed the way that Steve's drumming came through, and Nathan East's bass was top-notch, and I enjoyed the band sound. George's vocals were a mixed bag. On some songs he sounds quite good, and other songs he sounds strained, particularly when he's trying to reach the high notes. But was his heart in it? Probably not. He was just going along with his friend's suggestion, Eric, to do a tour with him. And I'm glad Eric persuaded him to do it, because it's all we've got. Even if his heart wasn't in it, we still got this record. And actually not all of the gigs, but certainly some of the gigs were filmed, because we've been drip-fed a few tracks over the years. We've got four tracks on this DVD which came with the Dark Horse Years box set, and I managed to pick it up standalone. I got Cheer Down, Devil's Radio, Cloud 9 and Taxman on there, and then on this 2006 DVD, secondary DVD which came with the Living in the Material World CD release, we've got the live performance of Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth. So in all we've got 5 songs so far out of a possible 19. So that's another opportunity further down the road. If the Harrison estate want to put out that concert, that would be very welcome. The song listing is interesting. He did a mixture, a bit like Paul on his Flowers in the Dirt tour. He introduced a lot of Beatles songs into his set list, and that was very welcome. It starts off with I Want to Tell You, the whole concert, then Old Brown Shoe, the B-side from '69, and then he does Taxman, and he does If I Needed Someone, Piggies, so, and of course Here Comes the Sun and Something, so quite a good sprinkling of Beatles songs in there, and he would do more or less the same set list at the Albert Hall, but he would miss out If I Needed Someone and miss out Dark Horse, which was performed on this Japan tour. And on the Japan tour, he originally did, on the first couple of nights, he did Fish on the Sand from Cloud 9, and on the first night he did Love Comes to Everyone, but both songs were dropped thereafter, which is a shame, because I'd love to have heard Love Comes to Everyone live, but I think I did listen to a bootleg of it. It was terrible quality. Maybe the band didn't sound very good, or certainly the album version is a great favourite of mine. So I'm familiar with Eric Clapton and his band, and even this band, because I've seen him so many times live. The first time I saw him was Cornwall Coliseum on my birthday, actually, May the 13th, 1983. We all drove down from Exeter. I was at university in Exeter. We drove down there and saw him, and I seem to remember he had Albert Lee playing with him then, and Donald Duck down on bass. And then he took up a kind of annual residence at the Albert Hall in sort of the late 80s, early 90s. And I saw him there quite a few times, and Mark Knopfler was playing with him once, I seem to remember, which was great. I remember famously my friend Andrew Brooks said that he got so bored with those Eric Clapton concerts he actually fell asleep during one of them. Anyway, the following year after this great, and let me just tell you what else was on the track listing for this double album, because I mentioned all the Beatles songs, but of course he plays What Is Life, he plays My Sweet Lord, plays Isn't It a Pity, those 3 from All Things Must Pass. I've left out While My Guitar Gently Weeps, of course, from the White Album, plays that. Roll Over Beethoven closes the concert. And Cheer Down is a track from '89 from the film South Pacific, is performed all those years ago as a delight. And the band, I think it's quite a difficult song to perform, but they do a wonderful job. Got My Mind Set on You. I even found myself tapping my foot along to that. It's never been one of my favourites, but they do a spirited version. So I think I've mentioned all the tracks. Devil's Radio is performed quite near the end. And so the next year, '92, there was an announcement that George Harrison was going to do a concert. It was only about 3 or 4 weeks before the date, 6th of April '92, that the tickets went on sale. So I remember getting into the queue very early. I think it was a physical queue rather than on the phone. So I turned up. I was in the top, 20 or 30 people in the queue, the front 20 or 30 people in the queue. So I got second row tickets, I seem to remember. And we all ended up standing in the first few rows anyway. The concert did not feature Eric Clapton. Gary Moore was featured. He had his own set. Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers was on guitar, basically replacing Eric's part. Joe Walsh had his own set. Andy Fairweather Lowe is featured, and I'd also seen him with Eric and also with Roger Waters. Will Lee on bass, not a bassist I knew much about. I did some research, and he's played with all kinds of people like Carly Simon and Roberta Flack, and he actually played on a track called Cooking from Rotter Graveur, which I didn't know. So that's Will Lee on bass. For some reason Nathan East couldn't make it, but Chuck Leavell and Greg Gaines are on keyboards, and Ray Cooper's on percussion. And then, as if the concert wasn't brilliant enough as it was, and it wasn't brilliant, can you imagine I was in the second row and George actually made eye contact with me during all those years ago. I remember during the line, they've forgotten all about God, he's the only reason we exist. He was definitely looking at me and smiling because he could see I was singing along. Anyway, at the end of the concert, I think he'd finished with Devil's Radio, he comes on for the encore and Ringo comes on with him. And then you can imagine I was just in ecstasy. And they perform While My Guitar Gently Weeps and Roll Over Beethoven. And Dunny, his son Dunny, joined him for the second song. And during those 10 minutes, you can imagine I was in the second row, not knowing which Beatle to look at. George Harrison here, Ringo just behind him on drums. And it was one of the greatest moments of my life, concert-wise anyway. I met Julian Lennon in the interval, going to the bar. I was on the way to the bar, he was on his way back from the bar. I said, "Hi Julian," he goes, "Hiya." So that was good. Piggies delightfully included the extra verse, which was dropped, which some sources, I think Keith Badman says was written by John, but I can't find any record of John saying that or George acknowledging that. But anyway, the extra verse, which is hilarious, is everywhere there's lots of piggies paying piggy pranks. You can see them on their trotters at the piggy banks, paying piggy thanks to the pig brother. I think that's wonderful sardonic humour, and I love it. So as I say, we've had 5 tracks from the concert, the Japan tour on DVD. We need the whole concert, please. Dunny, Olivia, if you're watching. And this album is, although the packaging is terrible, I mean, it's not going to help sell with a cover like that, is it? This is the back cover, slightly better. But and it didn't sell very well, but I think the music is worth investigating, and as I say, there's not much material we have of George live after the Beatles, so we should treasure it. And I thoroughly enjoyed getting back into it, so thanks for watching. See you next time.